to quickly show you one of the challenges that we're encountering at the front right hand corner. Normally, obviously, this is where the leg will go over. They're the holes for the leg bolts. And there's been a little bit of separation here in the cabinet, obviously. Now, when you have a look at it structurally, it's actually tip top, but it looks as though this is expanded over time. So you've got a gap here, and that's going to be easy enough to fill. But the delaminating of the top layer of the ply has obviously resulted in, me just having to rip that stuff off. I mean, half of it was gone anyway. And up there, by the way, that's not underneath the leg. So just getting a bit of perspective. In here, however, what will be underneath the leg, we've got to get this, we can put all sorts of filler over the top. Screws have been put in it at some point, obviously, while it's being routed, which probably has helped keep it together, obviously. But this stuff here, if you have a look, it's obviously coming off. Now, do we re-glue that, or do we rip it off and then just rebuild with filler over the top? To be honest, I'm thinking, given at this point down here, where we're back, obviously, past that first layer, that's probably what we do. But it's scary stuff, pulling this off. Yeah, so look, here's a quick follow-up. So I've just taken the part that was delaminating at the top, I just took off. Just that little bit there. And underneath, you can see the rotting that's going on in here. Like, this is falling out in front of our eyes. So you can't just fill over the top and then sand, because there's actually no contact here. This isn't together. The ply is obviously layers of wood that are held together with glue. If that glue isn't holding stuff together anymore, and this stuff's just there for all the work that you do on the top, it's obviously still structurally unstable underneath. Alright, so obviously we've turned the cabinet on its sides to have a look at the bottom, and this isn't uncommon at all, that part of the ply, when it's being slid around off the legs, stuff can catch. And of course the nightmare is that it catches on the outside, and if it catches on the inside, then that's probably not the worst thing that can happen. Now, most of it is still here, which is good news. So I'm going to glue this. We'll glue this and clamp it. There's some bits missing, so we'll have to obviously, do some filling through there. But for the most part, this will be fine. Alright, well, a little bit of the Aquid here, which is just PVA wood glue. In fact, it's probably the same stuff that they used to put the ply together in the very first place. And don't worry about getting your fingers in there. It all dries clear and it peels off. It turns into plastic on your fingers anyway and peels off. Often you don't want to get glue on your fingers for obvious reasons, but this stuff, it's not a worry. And these little quick grip clamps are the greatest, because you don't have a lot of room to clamp onto here. You've only got, not even a centimetre. Sorry for the Americans. I can't quite do the conversions on the fly. But yeah, as I said, losing parts of the front or back of your cabinet when it's being slid around, and if you're thinking to yourself, which your game's sliding around on the ground with no legs for, often when you're sliding them off and on the back of a ute or in and out of the back of a wagon or a pickup for the Americans, they can get caught on the little bit of steel that the tailgate latches onto. And often you lose, even worse, the front of your cabinet or the back. This inside bit, it's not a problem, and it'll be pretty right. Right, we're getting ambitious here, videoing and drilling at the same time, but you know how we were looking at those screws before? So I pulled them out, and they're just rusted out. I don't know how much moisture this game has had to deal with. When we look at the cabinet, we suspect quite a lot. It's just obviously been in a humid or wet environment. But for the screws that have been put in there by the operator back in the day to be rusted out struck me as weird. So I thought, let's just get rid of those. Instead of these old roofing screws or whatever they are, we put a clean, narrower screw in there. It's longer as well. We're in the position, obviously, the luxury of being, when we're going to sand this all back, obviously we're going to lose everything, all the art and everything. So I've just drawn a guideline so that we know exactly where the edge of the wall is that we're going into, the side panel of the cabinet. And then that obviously allows us to work out exactly where the middle is, and ta-da, we'll bang those. We've already done up on the top. Set the torque on 1 for on your cordless as well, by the way, when you're screwing in, and take it easy, because this plywood is surprisingly soft. So you do want it to be recessed down in there so that we've got sanding room, and you know the filler will go over the top and lock it in forever. But if you go in hard, you can go in too deep, and that sabotages the whole thing, and then you'll end up with obviously fraying and splitting on the surface level as well. So I'll bang a few more in along here. We'll know that that's all locked away, and then we'll fill all the gaps in the holes, and we're on our way. Hey, this is really interesting. I just thought I'd show this to you. I was speaking a moment ago about setting the torque on your cordless at 1 just to feel your way in there so that you don't blast through the top level if it's obviously got too high a torque and you end up burying the head of the screw too deep in there. You want it to be a little bit recessed away from the surface so that you've got sanding room, but you also don't want it here on the surface. The ones I did on the top bit of timber, you can see they're down in there, that's perfect. That was on 1. This is on 1 on a different side, so a different piece of ply. And it's probably going to need to be given a little bit more torque. I'll take it up to 2 or 3 in a moment. But it's a great illustration that every piece of timber you're dealing with is different. So don't assume that because you've got your torque set for one piece that it's going to be the same on all of them. We don't know, obviously, whether or not, you know, these cabinets are all from the one piece. And obviously here it's not, because this is much, much harder than this. And again, don't forget, make sure you do the drilling. So you send your drill hole, your guide hole in there first. Okay, so time to mix up the builder's bog. This is the hardener, obviously, so you don't want to mess up the ratio of these two, otherwise you're not going to have enough work time, obviously, or you're going to be waiting around forever for it to harden before you can actually sand it. I'm not sure these instructions have been all that helpful. Mix up in the cover cap, got that. Add 1/8 to half a level teaspoon of red hardener to each matchbox full of filler. Now, a teaspoon I'm familiar with. When was the last time anyone saw a matchbox? What an odd unit of measurement.
All right, well, to suggest that this unit of measurement is less than helpful would be an understatement. I've got the mask on because it said that there are vapours on the back of the can. We've completely messed it up. The mix between teaspoons and matchboxes has resulted in it getting very dry and flaky, and we only started getting through a little bit, and you can see already that it's not workable.
All right, well, a few hours after getting the mix of harden and bog ratio a little better than we did first time around, it hardened pretty well, and then some sanding, and you can see we're building it back up. In fact, this corner's pretty close. It's just a tiny soft point. Lots more sanding to do. We've just done a light sand along the edges. I'm using 80 grit sandpaper, and it's really just not getting back down through the screen printing straight onto the cab very well, which is cool that it's got such resilience. And it is sad, the history of the game, the story of the game is in its art, but there was no saving this one, so that's all right. That's a really good sharp edge along there now, and you can see along the front as well. You see where we're just building it up. If we ever look over this side, you can actually see what the edge of the cabinet, I don't know if you can get a real sense that it doesn't actually come flush. It comes down, and then it goes in at an angle, and then it's flat. Now maybe that is smart, and I haven't really looked at the other cabinets to see whether or not that's a Data East thing or that's an industry thing, but along this side, I filled all that. So we're actually going to have a sharp edge along the bottom. Now maybe if you're operating them or doing whatever, that's not a helpful thing when you're carting them around, but this one's going to be carted around. So anyway, we keep building up with a bit of filling along the way.